Our story begins a long time ago. It unfolds in ancient Israel, a land of rolling hills and sun-baked valleys, a place where history was often written not just in stone but in courage. This land was promised to its people. They believed it was a gift from a power greater than themselves. But this gift came with many challenges. It was a land often touched by conflict. The air itself seemed to hum with stories of faith and stories of struggle. Shepherds watched their flocks on the hillsides, just as their fathers had done before them. Farmers tilled the soil, hoping for good harvests. Life was simple for many, yet uncertain. Enemies often lurked beyond the borders. Threats were a part of daily existence. The people of Israel knew this well. They looked to their leaders for strength. In this particular time, a great shadow loomed. The Philistines, fierce warriors from the coast. They were a constant thorn in Israel's side. Little did they know what was to come. Far from the battlefield, life went on. In the quiet fields near Bethlehem, there lived a young boy named David. He was the youngest of 8 sons. His older brothers were soldiers. They were with King Saul's army. David was not yet a soldier. He was a shepherd, tending his father's sheep. A task that seemed humble, unimportant perhaps, but it shaped him in profound ways. David spent his days in the open country. He knew the paths of the wilderness. He understood the ways of animals. He protected his flock from danger, from the stealthy lion and the fierce bear. These were not easy tasks for a boy. They required bravery and quick thinking. David possessed both in abundance. His heart was strong, his spirit fearless. He trusted in a strength beyond his own. He was not a large boy, not imposing, but his eyes held a certain light, a look of quiet confidence and deep faith. He was preparing for a destiny he could not yet imagine. Now let us turn to the Philistine camp. Among their ranks was a champion, a warrior unlike any other. His name was Goliath, from the city of Gath. He was a man of immense size, a true giant. Some said he stood over 9 feet tall. His very presence was designed to intimidate, to crush the spirit of his enemies. Before a single blow was struck, he was the pride of the Philistine army. Goliath was covered in heavy bronze armor. It gleamed menacingly in the sunlight. He wore a massive bronze helmet on his head. His coat of mail weighed a tremendous amount. He had bronze armor on his legs too. A bronze javelin was slung between his shoulders. His spear was like a weaver's beam, huge and heavy. Its iron point alone was incredibly weighty. No ordinary man could even lift such weapons. He was a walking fortress of metal and muscle. Every morning and every evening he came forward. He shouted taunts and challenges to the Israelites. Imagine the scene in the Israelite camp. Thousands of soldiers, brave men. Yet they were paralyzed by fear. Each day began with Goliath's dreadful voice. Each day ended with his mocking laughter. The morale of the army was at its lowest point. King Saul, their leader, was also deeply troubled. He was the tallest man in Israel, but even he felt small before Goliath. He offered great rewards to any man who would fight, riches and his own daughter in marriage, and his father's house would be made free in Israel. These were tempting offers indeed. But what good are riches to a dead man? The soldiers whispered amongst themselves. They looked at the giant, then at each other, shaking their heads in silent despair. The challenge seemed utterly insurmountable. The days dragged on one after another. 40 days of shame and humiliation. Back in Bethlehem, Jesse, David's father, was worried. He worried about his 3 eldest sons, the ones who were with King Saul's army. So he decided to send young David to them, to take them some provisions, some food, and to bring back news of how they were faring. So David rose early one morning. He left his sheep with another keeper, took the roasted grain, the loaves of bread, the cheeses, and set off on his journey to the valley of Elah. When David arrived at the camp, he found a scene of great commotion. The army was going out to the battle formation, shouting the war cry as if ready to fight. But David soon saw the reality. As he ran to the ranks to greet his brothers, Goliath stepped out from the Philistine lines and shouted his usual defiant words. And David heard them, loud and clear. He saw the effect it had on the Israelite soldiers. As Goliath spoke, the men of Israel fled from him. David continued to ask questions. He wanted to know what would be done for the man who defeated this Philistine, the man who removed this reproach from Israel. His words eventually reached King Saul. The king sent for the young shepherd boy. David stood before Saul, respectful but firm. "Let no man's heart fail because of him," David said. He was talking about Goliath, the fearsome giant. "Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul looked at David with disbelief. This was just a youth, a boy, ruddy and handsome but hardly a warrior. "You are not able to go against this Philistine," Saul said. "To fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." The king saw the obvious mismatch, the experienced giant warrior versus the shepherd lad. It seemed like an act of suicide. Saul was trying to protect the boy, but David was not easily deterred. He had faced danger before, he explained. "Your servant has struck down both lions and bears," David continued, "and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." King Saul was finally persuaded. Or maybe he simply had no other options. "Go, and the Lord be with you," he said to David. Then Saul did what any king might do. He tried to equip David for battle. He clothed David with his own armor. He put a bronze helmet on David's head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. This was the best protection Israel could offer. The armor of a king for a boy champion. David strapped Saul's sword over the armor. He tried to walk, but he could not. He was not used to such heavy gear. It was cumbersome, unfamiliar, restrictive. This was not his way of fighting. "I cannot go with these," David said to Saul, "for I have not tested them." He understood that true strength comes from what you know, from what you are comfortable and skilled with, not from borrowing someone else's power. So David took off Saul's armor. He chose instead his own simple tools, the tools of a shepherd, not a soldier. He took his wooden staff in his hand. David walked out towards the Philistine. He moved with a steady, unhurried pace. Goliath saw him approaching. The giant looked David up and down. He saw a youth, ruddy and handsome. Not a fearsome warrior, but a boy. Goliath was filled with disdain and contempt. He felt insulted that Israel would send such a champion. "Am I a dog?" Goliath roared at David. "That you come to me with sticks?" The Philistine cursed David by his gods. His voice boomed across the valley floor. "Come to me," Goliath challenged, "and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." His threat was brutal, designed to terrify. He expected the boy to tremble, to flee, but David stood his ground, unafraid. He had a different source of confidence. He was not relying on his own might. David's reply was clear and strong. "You come to me with a sword and with a spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." As Goliath moved closer to attack, David acted with speed and precision. He placed the stone in his sling. He whirled the sling around his head, faster and faster, building momentum. Then, with perfect aim, he released the stone. It flew through the air, a small missile, straight and true, guided by an unseen hand. It struck the Philistine on his forehead, the only unprotected part of the giant. The stone sank deep into Goliath's forehead. The giant stumbled, his eyes wide with shock. He swayed for a moment, then crashed. He fell face down on the earth. The ground itself seemed to shake with his fall. There was a moment of stunned silence. The invincible champion defeated by a shepherd boy with a single stone. It was an unbelievable sight, a victory that defied all logic and expectation. David's victory was more than just a personal triumph. It was a turning point for the entire nation. It showed that courage is not about size or strength, it is about faith and conviction.